Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the pulp martial arts blaxploitation film Black Samurai. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this movie, I want to give a special shout out to Yule. I hope I pronounced that correctly for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, Black Samurai is a blaxploitation martial arts movie that was made on the super cheap, and it's based upon a series of pulp novels of the same name, apparently. And it's like a blaxploitation film meets James Bond, and with some other exploitation cult elements thrown in there. There's a white guy who calls himself the Warlock. There's voodoo magic. There's all that kind of stuff. It's directed by Adamson, who is pretty well known in cult film circles for directing some absolutely garbage films like Dracula versus Frankenstein, which is probably the most well-known film of his that I can think of, and it's not well known for its quality. It's well known for its low quality, but not for anything high quality. Now, Black Samurai is not what I would call a good movie, and Al Adamson's direction is definitely nothing special. It's very stock, very standard, very run-of-the-mill, like a lot of his films are. And the screenplay by B. Reddick, it's definitely something that's fitting for a B movie. Although in this instance, I would say a B movie would probably be a little too much when it comes to praise for this script. It's more like a grade Z level kind of screenplay. It deals with this agent for Dragon, the Defense Reserve Agency Guardian of Nations, played by Jim Kelly. The agent's name is Robert Sand, and he's tasked with trying to take down the Warlock and his army of soldiers, as well as trying to find this woman who was kidnapped by the Warlock and his men. The script is very paper thin, just an excuse for Jim Kelly to do martial arts and get involved in some spy stuff, as well as an excuse to just showcase some tits and ass. I mean, there are sequences in this that are really stretching the film's bare minimum storyline to its limits. I mean, you got multiple scenes of this woman who's just stripping, and it's just there for sex appeal or titillation factor. It's not really there for anything involving the plot, because that character never shows up again. There are other sequences where you can tell that they're just thrown in there to extend the film's running time. I mean, you got a really long scene of a mariachi band playing. I'm like, what is this? Mariachi greatest hits? Like, I'm not watching this movie for a mariachi band. I'm watching it for Jim Kelly kicking some honky ass. And in that regard, the script definitely does have a lot of action. There's a car chase. There are plenty of moments where Jim Kelly fights some fools with his fists and his feet. There is an honestly pretty cool scene with a jetpack, even though you can tell that the guy who's flying around in the jetpack is not Jim Kelly. Like, I swear to God, I think it was a white guy, just a white dude in the same like red jumpsuit that Jim Kelly was wearing in one of the scenes. And It's pretty obvious. This is also a film that is definitely of its time because there's a lot of lines of dialogue that are really uh, uh, they're really something that has not held up. Like you got multiple instances of Jim Kelly or other people calling other characters the F word, the one that ends in ut. And there's other stuff that is definitely not politically correct, which is fine because that's things were different back then. But it's still one of those things where it's a bit of a shock to hear nowadays, and it doesn't really add much to anything either. It just feels like it's there for shock value, even for that particular time period. There's an attempt at some sort of love interest sort of thing, but it goes absolutely nowhere. And they kind of drop it because then it turns out that the love interest is actually working for Warlock, so it turns out to be rather pointless. There's a climax involving Warlock, who might as well be a dollar store Doctor Strange. Whenever I saw him on screen, I thought of that meme where it's like, "Oh no, honey, we have Doctor Strange at home," and it's just have a picture of Warlock. Um, but yeah, I guess there's something to do with the freeze bomb, but you never see it in action or anything because they definitely don't have the budget for that. It it's a film where it just seems like they rented out a mansion and shot a few scenes in it and decided, all right, that's the set. We're just gonna use this mansion for the set. And so you have all these different extras who get in fights with Jim Kelly, and Jim Kelly did the choreography for the film, and it's fun to see Jim Kelly because he's a really engaging personality, but he's not the best fight choreographer. Like he did all the choreography, and these fights are so bad. Like he's punching guys and the fist isn't connecting, or he's kicking and it looks stilted and awkward, like he's not even actually making contact, or there's just no way a blow from that um, particular direction or point of view would actually do anything, or let alone incapacitate someone. And of course he's doing the typical kung fu martial arts stick, the Hawaiian, and that stuff. And you got the chop suey sort of sound effects. And there's a whole sequence with this other guy who I like to call man on film on steroids. And the reason why I call him that is because the guy is bald and he's got like a mustache sort of goatee combo. And he doesn't, not really a goatee, it's just like a mustache. And he looks exactly like Damon Wayans in the Men on Film sketch on In Living Color. So I have expected the guy to go and two snaps up, and because he does. He looks like Damon Wayans on steroids. And so he gets in a fight with Jim Kelly in the climax of the movie. And they're all talking shit to one another. And it's all done with a really bad and corny and just cheesy narration, because no one is speaking. They're not speaking to one another. They're like looking at each other and they're sizing each other up, but their mouths don't move. So there's just this really weird, just wacky narration, and they're talking shit to one another, but they're not actually talking shit to one another. And the film eventually culminates with Jim Kelly putting the Warlock in a prison with snakes, because the Warlock tried to trap the Black Samurai in there earlier. There's also some other stuff involving this I guess he's sort of the partner for a Black Samurai. It's this guy who I think works for the FBI or the police or something. And there's scenes where he's getting involved in martial arts, and that's also pretty laughable. And there's that woman, I think her name is Sin, who Sand was having some relations with, and then she turns on him, and she looks like Black Panther because she's got like the black like a black skin tight outfit with the teeth necklace and everything. I'm like, oh look, it's a precursor to Wakanda Forever. And she doesn't really do a whole lot. She gets in a fight with the Asian lady who was held captive, and it's really nothing. And I know it sounds like this isn't much of a movie, and it honestly isn't. It's not really that much of a film, but it knows it. It's like an hour and 20 something minutes. It knows that there's not a lot of content here, so that's why there's that extended scene of this white woman stripping and showing her tits. And it does have a lot of action. It's not very well shot or well choreographed action, but there is a lot of action. And there isn't really a lot of moments where things slow down. Like, there's always something happening on the screen. So it was moderately entertaining. I will say this, I did have some wacky fun with it. I'm not going to say that it's a classic or some kind of underrated movie, but I did have some wacky fun with it because of just how over the top and bad a lot of it is. And also, Jim Kelly is a pretty fun lead. I did like Jim Kelly in this. I mean, I don't really think it's even worth mentioning other aspects of the film when it comes to the technical aspects of it, like the cinematography by Louis Horvath or the editing by Jim Landis. I mean, it is what it is for this kind of film. Jim Kelly, he's the star, but he actually doesn't show up until like I think was it like 5 minutes or something into the movie. It feels like a different film at the start until you finally get to Jim Kelly. Bill Roy plays Janicott, the villain, the warlock. Roberto Contreras plays Chavez. I think that was no, that was a different guy. Marilyn Joy plays Sin. Essie Lynn Chia plays Toki. Um, Biff Yeager plays Pines. Charles Grant plays Bone. Bone was the guy who looked like men on film on steroids. And there's a few other actors and actresses, but really, honestly, the only star is Jim Kelly, and you could tell that he was cast in this film to capitalize on the success of Enter the Dragon because of the whole name of the agency that he works for, Dragon. You can tell that they were like, "Hey, Jim Kelly, he was in Enter the Dragon. That was a huge hit. We could probably afford him. Let's get Jim Kelly involved, and let's get him in this movie, and we'll shoot it for cheap, and rent out this mansion, and have Jim Kelly do the fight choreography because we're so cheap we can't even hire a fight choreographer." But yeah, and he also has that typical 70s soundtrack that honestly sounds like it could also be in a 70s porn, that kind of thing. But it has a certain charm to it. See, that's the thing about Black Samurai. It's not what I would call a great film or even a good movie, but there was a certain low budget charm to it that made it at least worth one watch for me. And there were some cool scenes. Like I said, the jetpack scene was actually pretty cool because it was a real stunt and it was a real jetpack. And I was really surprised they were able to afford that when it comes to how cheap the rest of this movie is. Like, it's kind of stunning. They were able to afford an actual jetpack. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say about Black Samurai. I know it's a rather short review, but it's an 88-minute long film. And really it is. It's just an excuse for Jim Kelly to just whoop on some some white dudes. That's really what it is. And I mean, for what the film is, there are better Jim Kelly films when it comes to that kind of stuff, like Black Belt Jones, um, and others. I think he was also in a film called Hot Potato. I think that's what it's called. I think that's it. But yeah, there's a lot of other Jim Kelly films that are probably better than this, and I would say are a little bit more worth your while. But if you're a fan of Jim Kelly, if you're a fan of blaxploitation movies, and that kind of stuff is your bag, then I think it's something you could dig. I definitely do. I think you could get some fun out of it. I've definitely seen worse. I mean, I wasn't hating myself while watching this movie. I laughed at some of the incompetent fight choreography and the narration and just the absurdity of everything and just how wacky it was. So that was a plus when it comes to this film versus other low budget movies that I've seen in the past. But anyway, thank you for watching my review of Black Samurai. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.